You don't have to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant or whatnot to be successful. Your own merits come from the what you measure and what you want to do.
Hello, welcome to the Unpacking Creative Lives podcast. I'm your host, Barney Preet, and this week we're talking to Shaun. Shaun is a music composer and music teacher. He also works with other businesses to help them create a sound for themselves. He works as a composer and he practices every day. In this episode, we talk about practice and what it means to live a full-time creative life. I hope you enjoy. What was your talim like with Pandit Nayan Ghosh?
I understood tabla, but I never met I guess, what you would call like the GOAT, sort of the greatest of all time, essentially. I mean, when I started my journey in tabla, that was a very big self-discovery moment. Coming to meet with him, understanding, I only had 10 days or so with him. That was exciting. It was fun. He gave me like a big snapshot. I was in rooms where like some of the greatest of Indian classical music musicians, they were there. Like even so much so that they've actually said, like in the school, Sangeet Mahabharati in Juhu, Mumbai, they said no photos. We cannot go in there and take photos. It's that sacred. So you have like some of the people like Pananal Ghosh. You have who else have you got? You got Amijan Trikwara, which is like if you look in the tabla history, if you're a tabla player, if you know Amijan Trikwara and the composition that he went through, he's like the guy that you wanna go through in terms of composition and whatnot. So that was amazing, and then understanding the shoes and the line at which I am coming from, because with classical music, it's always that guru shishya kind of thing. It's always a hand me down, and the tradition sort of passes on. Makes you realize like just the grand scheme of things of like how I fit. So I was like, I don't know, I just felt like a small speck of dust in this big like, megalomania kind of world and whatnot. It's like this little galaxy, Every Friday night they would always have a concert, and it would be local artists that would come over. What I liked about Pandit Nayan Ghosh is that he was very understanding that you are your own individual in terms of what you bring to the table.
I really want to know a bit about how you use your niche, which is Indian classical music and Western music, and how did you bring them together? What kind of blend? What did you learn from the blend?
Western audience tend to not really like, they'll just go, yeah, it's great, I feel the emotion, I'm connected with the non-musical abstract. But with Indian classical music, they'll be like, you made a mistake over there, didn't you? And you're like, oh, okay. So you get called on because they're quite well educated. So one of the things that I learned from this one was trying to combine the spontaneity that Indian classical music brings to the table and the way that Indian classical music focuses on the subtleties, like they have a lot of relation to the Indian mythology, so the chakra system and things like that, and the time of day and how that particular scale is good for that time of day and whatnot. Whereas with Western music, it's like music was more secular, and it's because back in those days, music was only allowed in the churches. So it was all for religious purposes, anything that had to be in praise of the higher being, so to speak. And then when it started getting secular, it's more like, well, okay, let's just play music for the sake of it. So the common ground was initially hard for me to find. And I think that was something that I really resonated with, because I came from a very predominantly Eastern society, and then coming to a Western society here in Australia, there were certain things that I couldn't really sort of work my way through because it was not what I was brought up to be. So finding that sort of common ground was really interesting. So one of the things for Indian classical music was I would take some of their learnings and the pedagogy that went with that and put it into Western music. So there are some similarities in terms of the scale, but it's not too like, for example, the nomenclature in Indian classical music is sa re ga ma pa, but in Western you have I think they've got the sol fa system, and also the Western, which is the alphabet system, C D E F G, and then the do re mi fa so. But with sa re ga ma pa, it's always changing. But with C, C, C. But finding that balance was a tough one. But I think eventually I find my way to sort of, I guess, put on different hats. When I'm writing for Western music, what would I do, and try and draw inspiration from that. Kind of like, I guess, making a dish, so to speak. You take different elements. Learn from your families. Let's put a bit of pepper with, like, I don't know, masala or something. And that
Mix
kind
it
of stuff.
up.
Mix it up, right? And then you sort of be surprised at what you get.
What's the big dream for you now in your musical career?
So I am at the moment trying to make a course, and the course I'm designing for, in a way, is the premise behind that is, if I knew all the things that I've learned in the past decade or so in my high school days, I think my composition journey would take a different route. Like, one of the things that I was doing during this whole lockdown was teaching students to make their own song, and some of them were like, "I can do that? What?
Oh,
Oh
that's
my
so
god!" Yeah.
special.
So it's not just a matter of, here's a sheet of music, follow the page, next piece, one piece a week. It's not like a rat race kind of thing, but it's more like I can create my own thing.
In one of your videos, you talked about a project on the Holocaust and that how you used non-musical elements to create music. And I wonder, what is that process? So run me through it.
I was thinking to myself, why can't we use music to explain a story? Why can't somebody listen to something and they feel transported back in time, or they feel into the world, right? There are things that I'm looking for. So I'm looking for descriptive words. So, for example, when it comes to corporate stuff, a lot of the corporates are really like, they're pretty dry. Not gonna lie, very like, we want to be dynamic. We want to show like we can do the job, but we also want to be like very professional. And I'm like, well, professional, dynamic, those are not really like, they don't strike me. They don't connect to me well. An example: I was working with a current student of mine, and he was like, Shaun, I really want to make an epic music. And I'm like, well, great. What's epic? Like, what is that? And then he's like, I want it to be sad, ethereal, soft. Great, but what's sad? Like, what is sad to you? Like, is sad like being lonely, right? So being a little bit more clearer. And he's a visual artist as well. So he started like to write some, like, show me some pictures, and he was having a little image of like someone playing the violin, but like a building that's just burning down behind him. That's his form of sad. It's like he's still going on, but like his heart he's pouring his heart out, but his structure's burning down. And then another one for ethereal is like, well, let's go even more deeper. Is ethereal more like an angelic kind of thing? Is it more like the halo around somebody and stuff like that? Let's try and paint a picture that's right there so that we can actually visually see it, and then that way we'll start going from there. And then soft. What is soft? Is like soft like, your pillow soft? Is it a soft like, a parent hug or something, or is it like a bed sheet and stuff like that? I'm a very visual person, so like that's stuck in my head. So when I see that visual, I'm like, well, what can I do? How can I use my musical elements to really marry that? The abstract element, I look at the more visual element. If there's any pictures or anything that can really descriptively work with me, I use that. And then this is the fun part, where it's like I just mix and match. I'll be like, let's try this. Does it work? Okay, cool. That's good, but it's not really there. Try another one. Keep trying. It's like and then we have like different ideas, and then I lay that on my session, and I'll be like, okay, this one works well. Let's try this. Cool, great. And then after that, the writing process becomes very intuitive.
You have quite a resume.
Thank you.
And I wonder, let's just start with the Conservatorium of Music. What was that like?
That was an interesting approach. I was obviously entering as a mature age student. A lot of my I guess colleagues were all fresh out of high school kind of thing. So mentality wise, experience wise, it was so different. They were just learning life. They were just understanding what it's like outside of school. I was like, I've already been there, done that. I've sort of learned a little bit of things. So I was a little bit more sort of way advanced. I could see things a bit more quick, better. I could sort of predict a couple of steps ahead, where some of my peers I know that were not, like, they were just going through experiencing in life, right? So that was an interesting approach, but that also humbled me, if anything, because part of composing is making you realize you looking deep at yourself and what exactly is it that you want to try and bring out. I think being in the world before jumping into the music world, I used to do a lot of like charity productions, a lot of music work and stuff like that, and a lot of people respected me. A lot of people respected me because of what I brought to the table. I earned my respect, so there was a lot of sort of like status quo. So what I thought was like, so every time I would go to like a social event or I would see people, the people would be like, "Oh, you're that talented music guy. Yeah, I seen you. You play like so many instruments. Yeah, you're really really cool." So that kind of hyped me up a bit too much, and then I realized that, you know what? Yeah, it's great. So I already had a bit of a reputation that was preceding me, but then when I came to the conservatorium, I was like, I was a nobody. Nobody knew who I was. I was just another student that was just going through the experiences, and then made me realize like, oh, I actually have to work hard. I actually have to do something about this. Like, everybody can be talented, but I think I feel like the three pillars in life is hard work, discipline, and commitment. And if you have those three things in your life, I think you can get what you want in your life. And my biggest dream when I was growing up to be in music was actually being a music composer. When I say music composer, I wanted to be that film music composer. I really love film music. I remember when I was studying music in HSC, I got introduced to film music, and the teacher at the time was showing us "Man from a Snowy River," and she showed us a scene, and she's like, "What song would go with this one?" So she played track one, track two, track three. One of the tracks had the actual music from the motion picture. One was, I think at that time it was like, who was it? I think that's when Justin Bieber came up with his stuff and he put like baby, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, cool. That was like, no, that doesn't work, but okay. It was like a scene of they were going through a horse ride, and I think they were coming down like the valley, but like something has happened, right? And then another one was more like a entertainer sort of Scott Joplin kind of vibe, and I was like, well, it's not funny, it's not poppy, but this one, that the track they had a lot of like strings, a lot of like suddenness, a very very timely cue with everything. So I was like, all right, Sean, I'm gonna be that film composer. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna get my next big, movie. And that time, that was when Marvel Studios was coming out and whatnot. So Iron Man came out. So I was like, that's it, the big gig, Marvel. Marvel's gonna call me because you know what? Everybody thinks I'm good. I'm great. They're gonna tell everybody, word of mouth, blah blah blah, kind of stuff. And then when I came to the conservatorium, I was like, oh, I'm not the only person who has this dream. My next door friend is having it. This person's having it as well. Everybody else is having it. Oh my god, there's an entire community behind it. There's like 30,000 people around the world who's also eyeing for this. Okay.
So this place taught you humility.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I never thought that. I guess, yeah, when you do become a dreamer, you exactly right. It's like dreaming about something so big and putting the smallest amount of hard work. And then once you actually put in the work, then you're like, oh, now it makes sense. Like now my work ethic matches my dream. But I'm curious to know, when it comes to discipline in music, what comes to mind when you think of discipline? Like, what sacrifices have you had to make to discipline yourself?
So I think one of the things that I learned was, and to be honest, in the past 2 years, I only started implementing these practices. Composing was like a muscle. It was like going to the gym. It was like, the more you keep doing it, the better you become, the more it becomes second nature. And having to sort of go all in with that and, just shut off what's happening with the world. Social media a decade ago was not even a term that was very commonly used. Now today, it's kind of like the movers and shakers of how the world works. How much am I consuming? What am I feeding myself with that information? And if I wanted to compose, am I just going to wait for the inspiration and juju to come to me and be like, I got a great idea, let's do it now? Or am I actually going to be like actively working on it? So I do a routine where I compose 3 hours a day. And that could either be jumping on a session and actually doing something, or jumping on the keys and just playing some stuff, or actually writing out some ideas. I compose because it's who I am. It's what I wanted to do. And most of it was just more of a mindset change and me sort of, I guess, facing my deepest, darkest fears of, one of my fears was, what if I started composing and I lose the love out of it? It doesn't become fun. It doesn't become exciting. Because
Right. It becomes a chore.
it becomes a chore, it becomes very robotic, it doesn't become natural. But then if anything right now, I've actually started to love my process a bit more. If anything, like whenever I listen to a track right now, I'll be like, oh, I love what you did over there. Oh, okay, great. Ah, cool, ideas. Grab that, put that into my little working area, start composing. I think if I didn't apply that level of discipline and being able to just shut everything and just focus on what is it that I want to do, um, I don't think I would be able to be at where I am today.
That's interesting. You have learned a lot of instruments, my friend. You
Yeah.
have learned a lot. I recently saw a video of you explaining how you learned a tuba in 1 week when you were really young.
Yep.
And I'm curious to know what the best mindset is to start learning new instruments.
Don't come in with the premise that you do know something. One of the students I'm teaching with, she's a grandmother, and she's like, my granddaughter always comes over and she always jumps on the piano. My mother used to play the piano, so I would like to sort of pass that on to my granddaughter and be that. So for some people, music is a connecting activity. But the first thing I would say to them is, you when I say this in a more candid way. Like, you don't know everything. Like, you just gotta put that ego and pride out of the door. And just come here with the intention that you just want to learn, you just want to absorb everything, because that will make the learning experience so much more better. Just come in with the intention that you just want to learn. You want to be a sponge. You're just absorbing. The beauty of, I find, with music teaching, because when I feel with music, I see the unadulterated version of themselves, not the bravado, not the general social impression. This is me and them, and it's a bit of an onion peeling kind of session, if anything, because it's really great because they connect to themselves.
What are you most excited about?
Well, it's been a week now since I popped the question to my fiance, so I
Congratulations. That's so
thank you.
exciting.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a week. I remembered growing up, and when I told family and friends and said that I wanted to do music as a career. So one of the statements I got from some family friends were like, "Oh, how can you put food on the table if you're doing music? Are you gonna work as a checkout chick for the rest of your life?" And it's funny, like when I heard that statement today, I was like, ironic. Look at the world we're living now. The checkout chick is the one that we rely on so much. One of the things that really excited me was, now today I'm in a world where I've finished my accounting degree. I worked in accounting. I now run a music school by myself. I don't run a big one. I just run a small one where I work with people. I'm making music. I'm doing what I love, and I'm about to get married. They always said that a musician could never make a living because of the way it is right now, and the general impression that people look at musician and they understand it's always a struggling musician, always struggling to pay bills, always not being able to make a life, like they can't have a family. And they always said that, you know, if you become an educator in the music composition world, it means that you really didn't do a good job in your composing world, right? I'm composing, I'm making music that I love, I'm helping businesses grow their own thing. I'm making them understand the power of music, how they can connect with their clients. I'm teaching families and realizing that they can make music, not just within Australia, but within around the world as well. I'm also able to, and do the things that I love, spend time with my families, be able to pop the question to my fiance and make this big commitment, planning a wedding. Never in my lifetime I was able to do that, because I remember when I grew up, those statements rung with me. Can you put food on the table by being a musician? You don't have to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant or whatnot to be successful. Your own merits come from what you measure and what you want to do.
Shaun, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
That was so awesome. Thank you so much.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next week for another one. All right, bye for now.